Hi, everyone. I'm so excited to introduce you to my guest today. If you're watching on YouTube, you'll see me glance at my notes. I really like to be intentional with how I introduce the people on the show, and my memory isn't what it used to be. My guest today is someone who has shaped my own creative process in a very big way. Simona Costantini, founder and CEO of Volt Productions. She leads a podcast production agency that supports more than 20 shows a week, many of them top ranked in their categories. She helps entrepreneurs and business owners amplify their voices, grow their impact, and turn their ideas into platforms that actually work. She also hosts two shows of her own, Happiness Happens and As It Relates to Podcasting, where she blends mindset, clarity, and practical strategy in a way that feels accessible and human. Simona is on the impact list because she brings clarity where most people bring noise. Working with her feels like stepping into a space where possibility and practicality can coexist. She meets every idea, bold or half formed, with a grounded, let's make it possible energy. She helps people find their voice and build something real from it. Today, we talk about her path from corporate to entrepreneurship, the values that guide her leadership, and the people who shaped her along the way. Let's get into it. Hey, Simona, I'm so excited to have you here with me today on the Impact List. It's been wonderful getting to know you over the last almost year that we've been working together. And I'm excited to share your experiences with my audience today.
Thank you so much for having me. It always never fails me to think back of how quickly time flies. And I feel like most things are like, oh, it just feels like just yesterday. And then you actually think about it and it's been an entire year almost. It's absolutely wild to me.
Totally. And I think one of the ways I've been really trying to be intentional about thinking about time right now is, it's actually where I'm going to start with our first question. What's something that's given you pause or made you laugh this week?
So it's funny that we were just talking about time. So, as we're currently having this conversation, I am about to have a baby this week. And so that was not on my list this week. It was supposed to be a few weeks from now. So, if I think about something that's giving me pause, it's that. And it is the pause in how is my life structured? How is my business structured? How is my team structured? I think we forget sometimes that at the drop of a hat, literally anything can change. And we always, rely on the status quo. Like, okay, tomorrow you're going to come into work or you're going to do this specific thing. And that's the thing that you're going to do. And very rarely do we actually stop to pause and think that actually life has other plans and it does whatever it wants to do. So that's something that's giving me great pause this week and a lot of joy because like the other side of that is going to be, I'm sure, very tiring, but also very rewarding and fulfilling.
Absolutely. And that is a wonderful thing to have to pause about. Obviously, we're very excited for you to get to this new stage in the journey. You've worked real hard for the last 9 months getting that baby ready.
Seriously.
And I think, one of the really interesting things is, as you mentioned, as an entrepreneur, right? When you work at a large organization and you're going on a parental leave, there's a lot of preparation that happens ahead of time. And there's a lot of
Mhm.
infrastructure to help you get ready. And as an entrepreneur, it's on you, it's your business. So, how are you intentionally setting things up for that continuity? As well as how are you going to be connected in a way that is meaningful, but also honors the fact that you're a human and you might need recovery time. And I think a lot of that really goes into your overall leadership impact and part of why you're on the show today. The impact list is really about what is the imprint you're leaving on the people around you, the people that have helped to shape you along the way. And as we talk, we're going to keep coming back to those threads. But just as you sort of mentioned that I'm having this amazing thing going on in my personal life, but I am also so aware of my business. And that is part of why working with you has felt so rewarding and such a gift. On the impact list, you are one of those rare people that I called out. You bring a lot of clarity instead of overwhelm. And entrepreneurship asks you to hold so much, right? The vision, the doubt, the momentum, the message, the personal life with the professional life. And from the very beginning, I really felt that working with you was like stepping into a space where possibility and practicality could coexist, which is why I'm so excited that this is the time frame we're having this conversation in. Every Wednesday, we had a standing meeting, and I would show up with these ideas that were like probably bold, probably half baked, probably I hadn't said them to anybody else yet. And you always met me with so much let's make it possible energy. You really cut through that noise without judgment. And you really helped me saw what's emerging, what am I becoming as I go on my entrepreneurship journey as well. And that my voice is an asset, something I shouldn't shrink away from. And I really feel like that's the impact you have. You turn those ideas and that momentum into dreams and you make them come to life. So, knowing that you're
Thank you.
obviously going on this journey yourself, when you hear your impact, what resonates most with you?
Oh my gosh. It's not very often. And I think this is why the impact list is so impactful and why the podcast is so impactful is that very rarely do people take the time to call each other out for the good things, for the happy things, for the powerful things. It's so easy. We talk about teams and we talk about leadership, we talk about conflict and all of the challenges that come with it. But we very rarely talk about those people who shift little things or big things. And those pieces are what I believe. I'm all about the messaging in your voice and all of that, but they're what I believe allows you to make a greater impact with your word, with your work, with the people that you lead. And so hearing you say all of that is such a nice reminder because I don't think that I've ever really heard anyone say that. Like people will say, "Oh, you did a great job," or "Oh, thank you so much." But Laurie, like a lot of my experience in leadership roles, especially when I worked in corporate, they weren't very positive. So very rarely do you hear all of the good things that you do. And so I think it's fantastic that you take a minute to call people out in a good way because something that I think about often is that we have the opportunity in life to add more good into the world or we can add more noise. And what side of that do you want to be on? Do we want to be adding more of that joy and that fulfillment and that purpose and that fire and passion under people? Or do we want to continuously tear them down and make them feel like they're not enough? And so we get to choose that as leaders of teams, of people, of culture. At the end of the day, everyone is here having a human experience, right? We're all here on this earth, on this planet, and we're all going through the things on a day to day. And parts of life are really hard and they're unexpected and things happen and teams shift and life comes in and tells you you're having a baby when you're not ready for it. You know what I mean? Like, even though mentally you should know and you should be prepared, life will always bring that to you. How do you meet that? And then how do you continue to lead through challenge and change in really significant ways? We can dive deeper into more of it afterwards, but those are my initial thoughts when you asked me that question.
And I think it's great. I think it actually is a really great dovetail into, you are the culmination of all of the experiences that you've had, right? And you take that with you into entrepreneurship and into the next phases of life, regardless of what happened in corporate and what you experienced. And you touched on it a little bit, but I'd love to know a little more about when you think about how you do lead today, your values, your style, your presence, what feels most true about who you are as a leader right now?
I think that I'm the leader that I probably would have wanted, helping guide me through my career. But I also think that I wouldn't be able to be this type of leader if I didn't have an alternate or a different type of experience. And we have the choice again to get hung up on all of the challenges, right? And things that have happened in the past and all of the quote unquote bad things. And then also we have the opportunity to let that go and to lead from where we are, how we are today in this moment, and knowing that when you genuinely think about what your values are as a human being, mine are kindness, care, and connection. Those are my top 3 values in life. If it doesn't have kindness or care or connection, I don't want it. I don't want it as clients. I don't want it as business. I don't want it as team members. I don't want it. It doesn't resonate. And so I started to get really clear when I first started my business. And before I went into the business full time, I was freelancing on the side. And I had built a freelancing business editing podcasts because I had a podcast and that's how I started in this space. And I was working a corporate job in PR and comms, media buying, ad buying, like all of the things. And even those freelancing clients that I worked with, I always made sure that they felt supported and cared for and valued, even if they didn't know me. Because if you look at a platform like that, it's like Fiverr or Upwork or something like that, you don't really know the person on the back end, right? Like you don't really know who they are. But either way, it's like leaving people a little better than you find them. And I try and live by that. And so when I think of the type of leader that I am today, I really go back to those values of kindness, care, and connection. I care deeply about my team, but not about in the way of like, oh, you need a day off. Okay, no problem. Yep, I care about you. Like I genuinely care about my team. I care about what's going on in their life. I care about the things that are keeping them up at night. I want to help in any possible way that I can. I might not be able to fix everything, right? And it's not my job, quote unquote, or responsibility to fix things for them. But as a friend, I just don't know why we would do business with people that we don't enjoy working with. And so I lead from that place of kindness, of care, of connection all of the time. And another thing that I always was very important to me, especially in the beginning of starting the business when I started to bring team members on, was having people in roles that they actually loved. So, you know, in entrepreneurship, it's a little bit different than in a corporate setting, for example, because in a corporate setting, people work in the job that they applied for. Obviously, they're applying for it because they have an interest in that. But sometimes every role has things in it that you don't love to do. And a lot of the times, there's a lot of things that you don't love to do in different roles. And so I really figured out like, what are my team members' strengths? And then how do we play into that? And then another thing, and this might be like more of a small business entrepreneur thing versus corporate, I don't care when they get work done. I really don't. Like they can get work done. A lot of my team works really well like at night. They enjoy working at night, and that's just who they are as people. For me, all I care about is if the deadline is met. That's it. At the end of the day, the deadline needs to be met, the client work needs to be done, and they need to be taking care of themselves. As long as those things happen, I don't care if you're in the office or doing whatever from 9 to 5. I don't. And that's like something with the corporate world that I just never resonated with. You know, having someone tell you that you have to sit somewhere for a specific amount of time when you could be more efficient in 4 hours than 8 is something that anyways, that I won't digress into that topic because I could go down that whole lens. But those are the things that influence the type of leader that I am today.
And I think it's really interesting, right? In the entrepreneurial world, when you've got a small team or it's just you're the direct tie. So your
Yes.
values can actually be amplified through your organization. It is
Mm-hmm.
who you are. And we forget that, right? Because in corporate, yeah, your values generally align with the organizations, but you don't often have that say, that direct thread
Mm-hmm.
of, I believe in kindness, care, and connection. Therefore, everything we're doing has to be aligned to that and
Mm-hmm.
really ensuring that your employees feel that connection, understand that those values should be their values and that you're always going to lead that way is something
Mm-hmm.
really powerful. It means you can't kind of hide behind the corporate mask of, well, they say they care, but they also tell me I have to be at my desk for 8 hours a day, exactly in the
Exactly.
way that they want me to. It's really one of those wonderful things I find about entrepreneurship where
Exactly.
you say it, you can dream it, your actions and your words have to match all the time, but there's no barrier to it. You got
Exactly.
that direct line.
The other thing too, Lori, is I think language is such an important thing as well. We are in the business of producing podcasts, so words and people is a lot, is pretty much everything that we do. But language is really important. I don't use the word employee. They're my team. I don't use assistant. They're my team, you know? And so in some ways, like I try and break down that like hierarchy level because at the end of the day, we're all working for a same purpose and a same through line, right? And so even I would challenge, like if someone is listening to this in more of a corporate role, think about you can only control what you can control, right? Within your own team environment. But what do you want your team to feel like? And how do you want your people to feel every single day when you come to work? What kind of leader do you want to be? I have a friend who is an incredible leader. She works for a company in Toronto and she's an account manager and she has a huge team underneath her. She makes them take their mental health days. She makes them use their benefits. She's on top of that. That's important for her as her own self, her own values. She'll say, "You haven't taken vacation in a while. You should probably take a couple days." Or, "Hey, have you used your benefits? You know, maybe you should go get a massage or go to physio." Like whatever it is that you need to do. Those are things that you can control within your own team environment. And those are the things that will help people feel more seen and heard and valued. So that even if you do have to sit at your desk from 9 until 5 and maybe you don't want to, at least you're working with someone who sees you, who hears you, who understands you. Those things are really important. And that is within your control as a leader.
It's interesting that you go there because I think that often in corporate, we need that accountability buddy. We need somebody to remind us that we matter and that, yes, work has to get done. And, we've got a boss that we have to provide information to and deliverables to for sure, but you still matter. And I think there's something to be said about when you work in corporate for as long as you and I did, and then made the entrepreneurial shift. And maybe I think this for you from our conversations might have been a turning point. But when you think about that connection between boundaries and kindness, I wonder for you, like, is that a moment that helped kind of shape how you lead? Is it a belief you've had to unlearn in order to continue your success? So the concept that if you create boundaries, you are not honoring yourself, you're not honoring the work. Tell me a bit more about that.
I think I laugh because I'm like, boundaries. I'm like, what are those? No, I'm just kidding. I think that there are so many things that happen in a day. And when you lead a team, you have to have some kind of boundary in place because otherwise, none of your own stuff gets done. And so I think that what I've learned the most in an effort to enforce more boundaries, communication has to be there and it has to be present. That's what I would say to that. And also, there's like a level of transparency, I think, too, that comes with that. I often will offer, do you need help with X, Y, and Z thing? How can I support you in this X, Y, and Z thing? While also being transparent, like, okay, I also have this, this, and this to do. And also, I can help you with this if you need it. And so I think that having strong boundaries is important in general because it protects your peace. Because at the end of the day, especially when you have your own business, it doesn't shut off. And it's not the same way as in a corporate role. Like maybe more of like a senior level would feel this. But, very rarely do people go home at 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock and like shut off completely and all of that, right? And so how do you make sure that people still have time to enjoy their life and all the other things that they do while getting everything else done? Communication paired with boundaries, I think, are really important.
And, obviously getting a little more reflective while you're on the like precipice of something huge, but that unlearning that you had to do
Mm,
to be able to say, I can set the boundaries. And as you think about this next chapter you're going into,
yeah.
what did that unlearning and that ability to set boundaries, what did that make possible for you?
It has been a huge process for me to unlearn a lot of those different behaviors because I felt like when I went through most of my career, it was very like, I don't know if the word performative is the correct word, but it felt very, I'm going to do this thing. Please see me. Did I do a good job? Have I done enough? There's that enoughness. And for me, that kind of, it got really ingrained. Like, am I doing enough? And then that started to translate into client work when I started my own business. Like, is this enough? Am I doing enough? And then I would overdo it, like, and not in a bad way for the client. The client was like, oh, wow, this is fantastic. But for me, it was like, overgive, 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 or be like, oh, yeah, it's no problem. Like, I've got it. I've got it. When really, I actually don't got it. And I don't have, the time to got it in this current moment. So a lot of that unlearning came through experience and it just comes through being put in those situations and realizing, hold on, I can only do this for so long. I can't do this long term. So something has to shift and something has to change. But you can only shift and change what you're aware of, right? And so I started to become aware of, hold on, maybe I'm overgiving too much in this one area. Maybe there should actually be a charge for this one additional thing that we do every single time. A lot of it comes down to awareness and being aware of where does your time go in a day and what are you doing in a day. And then so like the whole unlearning process from there really took me being honest with myself of this is how I'm spending my time. This is what my life currently looks like. And am I happy with that? Or do I want to shift that? So again, it comes back down to like the self-awareness piece. Like if you don't know where your time is going, where your energy is being spent, and how you're showing up, it's really hard to shift the behaviors that maybe you don't love into something that's more productive for your team overall.
And I really like that you were calling out that need for self-reflection. It's
Yeah.
so easy to be drawn to the environment around you, and you're just
Yeah.
going and going, and you're going because the work is going and going, and you're not actually taking that intentional pause
Yeah.
to say, but like, how am I showing up today?
Exactly.
Where is my headspace? What is going on? How am I showing up for the people on my team, for my clients? It does make me really curious around that kindness piece. Like, how do you hold those boundaries with kindness
Hmm.
to your team, to yourself? It's a little bit of a tightrope there.
100%. And I think it's also, this is not something that I would have been aware of a few years ago, but I think that is something that is deeply ingrained in who I am as a human being. I just don't understand why we go through life making people or wanting people to feel badly. And this was like a huge eye-opening moment for me. I used to have this one leader in a corporate job that I had, and I would go for walks at lunch, and I think I had like maybe 30 minutes for lunch at that role. And I would go for a walk and would literally get screamed at for not sitting at my desk and working the whole time. And I kept thinking to myself, I'm like, but it's also my life and it's also like the day. And like, I want to be able to clear my head and all that. And so when that started happening, I kind of vowed to myself, I'm like, I would just never treat someone like that. You really go back to like the fundamental things you learn as a kid. Treat people how you want to be treated. It's not something that people just say. I mean, it can be, but if you really think about it and live that, what does that look like for you in your life? So I think that in practicality, I always remind myself that yes, we're here to do the work. Yes, we're here to do the job. Yes, we're here to serve the clients, and we're here to make massive impact and get to do a lot of really cool things. Like we do a lot of really cool things. We work with some really fantastic people and we work on really cool projects. And also at the end of the day, the kindness that I showed to myself and to my team supersedes, right? Because it's like you think about boundaries, you think about the transparency, you think about communication, you think about all of these things. And how do you show kindness to other people? Well, by taking an interest in who they are as human beings and in their life, right? And so it doesn't mean that you have to go and like know every single thing about every single person that you work with and like be so deeply ingrained and connected into their life in that way. But I bring it back to care. Like we have the opportunity to genuinely care about people. And so if we genuinely care about people, naturally the response to that is kindness, right? We can show more empathy. We can show more grace. We can show more ability to pause and understanding versus letting frustration or anger or whatever take over. And so there's like a balance there too, because of course you always want everything to get done. And also, if you take a moment and you can pull back when you want to just let someone have it, if you can pull back and remind yourself, is this thing really going to matter in 5 minutes, 5 hours, 5 days, 5 years, 5 months, whatever the cadence is, whatever, that always helps me reframe. Is this a short term, very imminent thing, or is this something that's going to actually impact a long time from now? And if it's a short term thing, I just take a pause, I take a step back, do something else, and then I'll come back to it. It's kind of like that theory of like you just never send an email when you're angry. Does that make sense?
100%. A lot of the work I do is to talk about with my clients, how do they like hold their own emotional containers, right?
Yeah.
And how do you show up as your best self in the absence of letting somebody else pull your emotions from you? And so much of that is what is the clarity you're putting in place for yourself? What's the self-reflection? And really being able to show up in service of
Mm-hmm.
the people that are around you, as opposed to, I am bringing all my stuff in and I am going to lead with all the chaos that is happening with my life. Yeah, there might be a ton of chaos happening in my life, but if I am here and I am being paid to be here as my best self, what do I need to do before I get into that room, before I get in front of that client, before I sit in front of my team every day to
Mm-hmm.
contain the chaos so I can be my best self? So
100%.
exactly what you're saying resonates.
Too, Lori, I want to just
Mm.
add to that really quick is that a lot of the times other people's behaviors, reactions, things that they say, and so on, really have nothing to do with us. Because you have to remember that, let's say you're having a day, okay, and it's not the greatest day. So are other people. Other people are also probably not having a great day. Maybe they've had a really challenging morning with their kids. Maybe the project that they're working on, it just really isn't going according to plan. Maybe someone in their family has gotten a diagnosis of something. Maybe they're really overwhelmed with the way that the world is, right? And so always remembering that other people's reactions and the way that other people come to you really oftentimes has nothing to do with you. And so I always remind myself that any reaction that I receive has nothing to do with me, but then I, exactly like you're saying, have the ability within myself to absorb that, right? And understand that, and then approach it with a more calm perspective. It's not always easy, but when other people see that you see them and that you're hearing them and that you're noticing that maybe something isn't going 100% right today, that will help break down walls and barriers so much more. And then you have the type of relationships and cultures that all these companies are wanting to have, right? People think about, why is it or how is it that certain companies have certain cultures and people are really happy and then others are not. I always think back to, what is it that you can do in your small amount of orbit that you have impact on? It makes a big difference overall. Sometimes all people need is just to feel seen and heard.
100%. One of the really critical things I think we don't do enough of is that concept around validation, right? Validation doesn't mean that you are agreeing. It doesn't mean consensus. It doesn't mean decision making. All it means is that you are seeing somebody.
Exactly.
You are seeing what they're going through. You can acknowledge that it's tough. And then you're actually able to help them ground themselves. You've grounded the situation and you can move forward with a solution. And additionally, to the point you're making, it is so easy to assume that everybody you're interacting with has a feeling about you, when
Yeah.
you're right. They might be coming into the conversation having just sat in traffic for a couple of hours, got off a terrible call with a client. There's so much going on in everybody else's world that it might have nothing to do for you. And as I said earlier, I really do try to ask myself, what is the most helpful thing I can do for this person in the moment? And you're right. Sometimes it's just validating. Sometimes it's just listening. And those things are so critical before you offer a solution, offer a remedy. It's like, get curious in that moment
Exactly.
about what's going on with them. And that really gives you that opportunity to have a moment of clarity for both you and the person on the other side of the table, whether it's teammate, client, potential client. And, it's kind of a really great dovetail into, when things do get loud with leadership for you. I think you told us earlier you take walks, but what does help you stay grounded in those moments?
I have to go back to walking. For me, I am someone who, I have a walking pad in my house and I can walk on that thing for like 3 to 4 hours. Movement in general helps emotions and stress and all of the things release out of your body, but I feel like when you're stagnant for so long, all of that just like freezes up within you. That's just how I picture it. So for me, how I always continue to stay grounded is by walking. Like that for me, if I've had a stressful call or if there's something going on or if I feel overwhelmed or whatever, whether I'm walking outside or I walk inside my house, even just 20 minutes, like it shifts the energy, it shifts the feeling and it shifts the emotions behind it. And it helps you bring more clarity. And it's also creating a little bit of space for yourself too, right? So there's those two things. And then I also like to fall asleep to sleep meditations. I don't know how they, what the science is behind it, but I just assume that they infiltrate my brain and then they help my brain wake up refreshed the next day.
I love that. Similar as well. And I think that both of those things that you called out goes back to that piece I mentioned earlier on the impact list. It's that you really do bring that clarity during overwhelm. You bring that to your clients, you bring it to your team. So I'm curious about somebody who shaped you as a leader and,
Mm.
somebody that you would put on your own impact list.
I had this one boss in when I worked in corporate. It was one of my first sort of real marketing jobs, if you will. And it was early in my career, and her name was Laura Barsky was her last name, and she was our VP of marketing. And I just found her always, like, no matter what was going on in her life, I always found her just kind. I found her approachable. She cared about us. She protected us. Like, she protected her team, which I absolutely love. She always stood up for us. She had our backs and she didn't let people push her around, which I loved. She worked in the whole industry overall was like more male dominated than anything, but she always stood her ground. And also she was like always so put together, and she always just had the coolest outfits on, and she had the best ideas and like the best marketing ideas. And the industry had this like annual conference, and there was always a party, and she always was so meticulous, and she was so thoughtful in how she brought things together. And I just loved that about her so much. So she is someone that I would put on my impact list. She was a really good leader.
And if you sort of had to sum up, what is that impact she left you with, or that thing that she taught you that you still carry with you, what would that be?
I would say thinking outside of the box, that not everything is cookie cutter. There's processes, there's systems, there's ways to get to where you want to go. And also, we have a lot of free will in between that of how something looks, bringing it to life. And so I would say, yeah, thinking outside of the box, creativity, not being afraid to try new things, and trying something different are things that I've pulled into what I do today.
Oh, I love that. Sometimes it's just you need that one leader who shows you the art of the possible and that you
Mm,
can dream it, you can do it, and gives you that courage, that initial courage to get started on that journey. It's fantastic.
100%.
Um,
100%.
and then obviously, as you're preparing for your leave and you're thinking about your leadership impact, when you think about while your team is carrying the torch while you're not there, and then beyond, as you've built this fantastic business, what do you hope that your imprint is?
I hope that my imprint is that people truly know and feel and understand that they can do and have and create the life that they want to for themselves, and that everything that they want. I know people say this and it sounds cliche when people say, like, oh, everything you want is on the other side of fear. But if you think about it, sometimes it just takes getting over the fear of one specific task. And on the other side of that, you have so much more impact, so much more freedom, so much more voice. I want people to know, and I want them to remember that they have the ability to genuinely do what they want to do in their life. And it doesn't really matter what other people say or think or feel about it. At the end of the day, it's your life. You are living it and you're creating it how you want to. And those are really important things. And I hope that my leadership style leaves that as an impact.
Yeah, I mean, I think that you said it so well, right? I think that it really is about that unlearning of fear of being seen and fear of having to fit into a particular mold or do a particular thing. I feel like it's so freeing when you hit that spot where you're like,
Mhm,
actually, I have to be most true to myself and do the things that are going to bring me the most joy. And
mhm,
whatever those things are, really put the time and attention into it. And part of it, as we've talked about today, is it calming down that noise around you so you can be grounded and purposeful. And you have the ownership of yourself in the
mhm.
conversation, and it takes so much deep work to get there. But I think once you do, it's just so unlocking. And I really appreciate you sharing your perspective with us today. It's been wonderful to get a little more time to spend with you ahead of your big change. And as well to share with the listeners just some of the insights you've had through going through corporate, building your own successful business, and really looking forward to seeing where our partnership takes us, where your journey takes you. Thank you again for being on the show today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so honored, so grateful, and I hope this impacts someone to make a little shift in their life.
Thanks for listening to The Impact List. If today's conversation gave you something to think about, subscribe for more grounded, honest discussions with leaders who are figuring it out in real time. And if this episode would help someone you know, pass it along. This is your reminder to lead clearly, stay human, and focus on what actually matters.